What are you waiting for? Take that first step. All we have is now.
Today's guest is someone who redefined what it means to be strong. She's an Ironman athlete, an award-winning author, and a woman who turned a life-changing diagnosis into a journey of rediscovery. From battling a brain tumor to biking from Canada to Mexico, she's proof that resilience isn't about never falling. It's about rising again and again. Please welcome the incredible Risa August.
Today I have someone very special, and she's an Ironman. She's battled a disease, tumor in her brain, and epically so when you'll hear about her. She's written a book. She's given a beautiful TEDx, which I had the pleasure of listening to just moments before we recorded this podcast, when you bike 1,800 kilometers from Canada to Mexico.
And then I worked my way up to an Ironman race. And then I started doing like endurance cycling events and suddenly I'm this endurance athlete. And then when I was diagnosed with a pituitary tumor, a tumor at the base of my brain, and a very destructive disease called acromegaly, I was all of a sudden faced with, you're never gonna do that again. I feel like I'll die. If I sit on this couch one more day, I feel like I'll die. And I that moment decided to live, and that was the day I signed up for a 1,845 mile bicycle journey from Canada to Mexico. And I had no idea how I was going to do that. I couldn't even barely get off the couch, but I knew I had to start somewhere.
Welcome to another episode of the IgnitedNeurons Podcast. Today I have someone very special from the other side of the world, the United States, and she's an Ironman. She's battled a disease, a tumor in her brain, and epically so when you'll hear about her. She's written a book. She's given a beautiful TEDx, which I had the pleasure of listening to just moments before we recorded this podcast. And I'm looking forward to what you will learn through this experience, because there's some deep wisdom when you bike 1,800 kilometers from Canada to Mexico. Welcome, Risa. How are you?
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's such a joy. And I sometimes feel like, I don't know how, but this idea of reaching out to guests, and we do it like there's no method and science to it, right? We just reach out, and I just wonder always that the person on the other side has such a deep conversation to offer, Risa, that I feel it's such a privilege to be on the podcast.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. Yes.
Absolutely. And the journey that we begin on the podcast is that we start from the very beginning. And so the first question that kind of sets up the rhythm for us is, if that 8-year-old Risa, wherever that Risa was growing up, as that little kid, dreams or challenges or opportunities, if that 8-year-old were to come and meet you right now, what kind of a conversation would emerge, Risa?
Yes. So there's so many things. Because there's so many parts of me. There's the part of me of like, woohoo, you did it. Like, you did it. Like, look at everything you've accomplished and put your mind to and set out to do. You accomplished it. And there's that overachiever part of me that sneaks in a little and is like, you should have done more. You remember all those times you wanted to travel or take that risk or take that chance? You should have done it. And I'm actually faced with a decision I'm having a hard time making right now. And it's not like this life-shattering decision, but it's, there's finances involved and such. And I'm like, I feel nervous about, it's something I really want to do, but I feel nervous about spending the money on it. And it's like, but wait a minute, like, what is this going to get me? Like, what? So, yeah.
It's an interesting space, and I always wonder how, and I find this a difficult question for myself to kind of answer, right? 8-year-old, that's like many moons ago. But what do you think were certain early influences, experiences that shaped up, and we'll learn more about you, that shaped you up to be this resilient, this go-getter? And I remember you'll share with us also, like, sitting on that couch in your gray sweats to be registering for a 1,800 kilometer bike ride. What experiences shaped you up?
Well, again, I call her old Rissa. She was the overachiever, and it all started with someone saying, you should try a triathlon, and so I tried a short distance, a sprint distance triathlon. And I tried it and I loved it. And then that wasn't enough to me. So I had to do a longer one and a longer one. And then I worked my way up to an Ironman race. And then I started doing like endurance cycling events and suddenly I'm this endurance athlete. And then when I was diagnosed with a pituitary tumor, a tumor at the base of my brain, and a very destructive disease called acromegaly, I was all of a sudden faced with, yeah, you're never gonna do that again. Like, you're not gonna be able to. And, um, and so there was this exact moment where, post-brain surgery, and radiation treatment where I was coming to terms with, my gosh, I'm never gonna be the same again. And I was so focused on, like, well, then who am I? Like, who am I if I'm not this overachiever and this Ironman athlete and doing all these outstanding things? And I remember being so focused on what I couldn't do that I just finally shifted and I was like, wait a minute, what can I do? And I said, well, I know what I need to do. I need to start looking at my life differently. And I need to start all those things I had on my bucket list. I need to start revisiting those. Those things that you put off, like I'll do that someday. And one of those was riding my bike across country. And so on that same day where I decided this is no way to live, I feel like I'll die. If I sit on this couch one more day, I feel like I'll die. And I that moment decided to live. And that was the day I signed up for a 1,845-mile bicycle journey from Canada to Mexico. And I had no idea how I was going to do that. I couldn't even barely get off the couch. But I knew I had to start somewhere.
As you're sharing this, you're making it look very easy. So you're saying, oh, I was sitting on that couch in my gray sweats, and then I thought I have to start somewhere. I want to live again, and you sign up for this. And there are so many threads I could pick from that conversation. Let's go to that moment when, and I cannot fathom, like when you're told that you have a tumor in your brain, you have this rare condition called acromegaly. Like if there was a fly on the wall on that day when you were told that when your scans came out and you're sitting with the doctor and they're saying this, what would I see and hear, Isa? Because yeah, what would I hear and see?
Well, I remember it took about 7 years to get diagnosed from the time I started noticing something was off in my body. There were
7 years? Did you say 7 years?
7 years, yeah. And I was an athlete, so I was very in tune with my body. I took care of myself, and there were things I just couldn't explain. And doctors kept telling me, we're not worried. I'm not worried. I'm not. Your blood work's fine. You're an athlete. Don't know. So, but it got to a point where headaches were so severe it was impossible to ignore. Yes, this was an incredible moment. It was a moment of validation. I remember thinking, and I'm pretty sure I used a swear word, but I remember saying, I knew it. And so in that moment, that's really all that mattered to me. And my old mindset of, well, I do things on my schedule. I'm in full control. I'm very rigid in my life. Like, I just thought I would, okay, well, let's get this taken care of so I can get back to my life. And it wasn't until, I'd say about 3 months later when we discovered that they didn't get the entire tumor out and the remaining tumor was inoperable. That's when I started to realize, oh my gosh, I'm not ever going to function the same again. And so I'd say on that day in the in the doctor's office, maybe a little bit of cockiness. I'm way more humble now.
Wow, a moment of validation, and yeah, I can imagine that you know something's not right, but no one's able to find out what's not right. And then when it happens and you're like, oh, I knew it, there was something wrong. I can imagine that moment. And you said like that put you on that reflection, right? Where you said, I'm never going to be the same again. And then this question of who am I? How did you go about answering that question? Because that's a journey in itself.
Yes. And it definitely wasn't easy. It was a process. And one that is still unfolding. It's been almost 7 years since that diagnosis and surgery and the upheaval, I call it. I had to, I had to grieve the old parts of me. I had to let go. I had to get to that point of acceptance of, okay, I'm no longer going to be that person, which at the time, I didn't know this at the time, but looking back, I'm like, well, that ain't such a bad thing because she wasn't all that great. She was, that's so, um, I like me much better now. But so I had to grieve. I had to allow myself to go through the process. And there, that part of me that's still the overachiever or wants to do everything perfectly or wants to do everything for everyone else, she still shows up. But I also had to start standing up for myself of like, hey, you know what? I'm not doing okay, and I can't do it all, and I can't fix your problems and mine, and I'm not gonna be able to do another Ironman or throw big lavish parties or, I had to almost stop caring what other people expected of me and the role that they were used to me being in. And, that was hard because I got a lot of acknowledgement and affirmation from being in that role. And so that was, yeah, that was challenging. And then, I had 14 months to get back on my bike and get to that Canadian and US border. I had 14 months to figure how that was going to happen. And it didn't start with getting back on my bike. I just had to get off that couch. That was the first thing I had to do. Mm. And then I was in wearing these gray sweatpants. They were just faded and tattered and wearing out in the knees. And I had to get. I always joke about the gray sweatpants, and I had to get those. I had to get changed out of those and put clothes on, and then I walked to my mailbox for the first time, which was a big deal. And then I actually started painting. I started painting. I needed somewhere to focus my mind, like a mindfulness practice. And then I started selling art around the world. I don't even consider myself an artist, but it was just this step-by-step process and literally in the moment, like, what can I do right now? Because I certainly can't get on my bike and ride 1,800 miles, that's for sure. So what can I do right now?
Yeah. Let's build this step by step process, because I want our listeners to really feel that when you start a journey that might transform you, it is not as clear as it seems when you're in the middle or towards the advanced stages of the journey. Let's not even call it the end stages, because the end never comes. It's ongoing, as you were saying. And what I loved what you said about just now is like, to all our listeners, grieve that old part and let that old part go. If you feel that there is a need to change and shift and be someone else, it's absolutely okay to make that choice, and no one should be able to stop you. And we'll also share with them, Risa, not yet, but towards the end, what did you do with those gray sweatpants? Because I'd love to have you share that story, what happened. So here's where I'm at, right? You're on your couch and you feel you can't do anything. And that for you, it happened in a light bulb moment where you moved from the can't to the can and you said, I can do something. But for someone who's right now in that state, Risa, who's saying that I don't have any control, um, there are too many things in life, my environment is too challenging, I am in a full-time job, I'm in a startup, I have my startup and I cannot change anything about my life, whatever that looks like, right? And I'm just putting it out there. For that person, how do they get to their light bulb moment?
Hmm. Well, I love that we're talking about this. It wasn't like a light switch. Like it took me 6 months. It took me 6 months to get there. You know, but I allowed myself each day to make a choice. I allowed myself, okay, maybe tomorrow's the day I'll get out of these sweatpants or get off the couch or um so allowed myself that space to cry, grieve, be angry, whatever it was. And and then when I made the decision, the light bulb moment was I knew, and you're gonna love this, I needed to reignite my inner spark. I needed something to I got the goosebumps. And so I knew if I set this goal, like that was gonna do it. Like that was gonna reignite it. And so, no turning back at that point. Like I was all in and it was not smooth. It was not easy. There were times I questioned and doubted. Um, and I just kept simplifying and coming back to the moment. And also keeping my heart, I don't wanna say my heart on that goal, that spark, that igniter of, you know, that's what kept me going.
It's a very intense state. What you're describing, I've felt that way, and so I can relate very strongly to it. Because when you put your heart onto something, it's like no one will understand what you're going through in a way, and they can try to, and I think we all have our support system, and we cannot do it alone. But it's just really hard for someone on the outside to really understand how ignited you are within. Uh,
Mm, mhm.
How did that happen for you? Like, how was your environment and you sitting on the couch, took that 6 months, registered for the, maybe you've told your friends, family, I don't know. Like, how did they respond to it?
To my igniter,
Yes, your igniter.
um, several people were like, you're doing what?" And I think they were kind of like, "Well, okay." I think they were thinking in terms of, well, shouldn't you be recovering and resting and taking care of yourself? And this felt like I was taking care of myself. This felt like what I needed to do. And it wasn't necessarily about, I want to speak to those who are listening. It wasn't necessarily about going out and doing 1,800-mile bike ride and this big thing. It was more about I had to heal my soul. And that was kind of gonna be the vessel for it, like, if that makes sense. And, and for someone else, it might be something different, but it certainly opened me up to other things and how much joy and expansiveness I feel, even just going to a farmer's market. It's just really opened me up, and so that's something I do wanna say is, like, it doesn't have to be this grand, big 1,800-mile bike ride. I started taking, like, different dance classes and I tried, like, axe throwing and indoor skydiving and all kinds of fun and wild things and, um, anything to keep that spark, lit and growing,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. So it's you creating the foundation, right? Because you said that 6 months it took. You kept saying tomorrow, 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 and there are many who would be doing that. That's absolutely okay. I think the foundation is to be okay with whatever state you're in, but have the awareness that you want to change something about it. So I think that's a beautiful foundation on which we will put the next three steps. Because I've heard the TEDx talk, so I know the three steps. I think what I really liked, and something that you said in your TEDx, and I'm kind of bringing that up, is that the conversations we have with ourselves, what we tell our subconscious, and what we like, how we speak to ourselves in our mind, that impacts a lot of what we will be able to achieve or not. How did that evolve for you?
Again, I feel like it was a lot of letting go. So I did a lot of counseling and coaching and therapy, and I just allowed myself to be where I was, which old Rissa wouldn't have done that because, old Rissa was so rigid and like, no, I have to be this strong, incredible person still showing up the way I was. It's almost like you have to refire or like, how am I trying to frame this? I think you know what I'm trying to say, but it's like you have to um, just shift everything. You have to, and it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. But the more you do it, the more you get used to it.
I think it also plays in, and correct me, like how you think about this, if you don't agree or agree. I think it's also about like, we're very fearful of uncertainty, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to be going next. And that uncertainty puts us in a space where we're unable to have these conversations with ourselves. We keep telling ourselves the tomorrow does not change, because if you change, then you don't know what the path less travel will look like. You don't know what the road less travel will look like in the future. And so I think that's why we don't shift things easily. And I've done this multiple times, and I realize over time when I'm speaking to someone or sharing my journey with them, I feel it becomes, the wiring in the brain shifts so much that I feel if I'm not making things uncertain, then I'm not having fun, which also has its own repercussions. But I think that's the shift, right? That you become so comfortable with uncertainty that you feel you got this.
Yes. And again, I love this. This is right up my alley because I think it's also about focus and language. I love neuro linguistic framing. And, where are we going to put our focus? Are we going to, like, what are we going to assign to that uncertainty? Like, oh gosh, what if it doesn't work out? But then you hear the alternative. What if it does?
Love it. I love this question, and when you will get a moment to listen to my TEDx, that's what I ask the audience, because we can be fearful of the future, but who the hell knows what the future is going to be like? If I don't do anything, the future can be worse. If I do something, the future can be worse. What do I want? Do I want to choose to not do anything about it, or do I want to choose to do something about it? And I think that's where the difference is. To anyone who's listening and is with us till now, we've built the foundation where you know how you have these conversations with yourself. You know how to shift the mindset. What we'll hopefully get into next, and Risa will guide us, is that what does it mean to say, I can do it? What does the C stand for in this?
Yes. Well, I actually, I created a little mantra around the word can, and I took each letter from the word can. And I remember asking myself, because it's not about like, oh, what can I do? It's more about, okay, what am I capable and able to do right now? And so I took the word can and I said, capable, able, now. What am I capable and able to do right now in this moment? And that changed everything for me. Because we can't skip all the middle stuff to get to the end thing, right? And so so I truly had to simplify my life as much as possible to uh, to keep working toward because that's what I decided to do on the couch that day. It was like I decided to live, and what did that mean for me? Well, part of that was checking off all those things on my bucket list, but the first letter C is capable. And you start with asking yourself, what am I capable of right in this moment? What am I capable of? Even if it's something small. And I remember some days for me, it was, well, I can brush my teeth. I can get out of bed and brush my teeth this morning. And that's where I started.
That's it chunks down the journey, right? You don't have to climb Mount Everest on day one. You can just maybe climb the stairs in your house, and that's one step. And let's maybe take a. I know our stories can show the CAN acronym really well, but let's take a hypothetical example. Let's take someone who's maybe 37 years old, or yeah, in their 30s, and they are in a job, in a career that they love, but they want to change to something that they've always dreamt of.
Mm.
And I think that puts a lot of pressure on that person, because it makes them feel like, oh, I have to do so much. I have to build so much. So in that moment, what do you think they're capable of, Risa?
Ooh, um, again, I feel like it's going back to that spark. What is it they want to change to? I have a great example of one of my clients, being in a high career position, and she wanted to be a chef. And I think a lot of times we think it has to be all or nothing, right?
Mm,
And and so it was her kind of thinking about, okay, what do I value about my current job? Like, what do I want to keep? And then what do I want to let go of? And then looking at, the things that she loved, her passion, which was cooking. And okay, how can I incorporate that? Like, how can I, join them happily together? I guess I'm struggling with words today, but so it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and you don't have to figure it out right in the moment. So again, go to that spark. Like, what is it? Like, what is it that's going to light you up? And how can that fit into your life?
yeah, love it, and find a way to marry those things together. Because I love that example. We should just go with, so a very senior person wants to become a chef, but finds it really hard, and so it's not an all or nothing space. I think that's a cognitive distortion that the brain pushes you into. I think it's better to say, how can I marry the two? So maybe you can, and you can join cooking classes. You can start to cook over the weekends. You can start to do something in your workplace. And so many small little steps can be done, which will help you to evolve and be where you want to do. And I think what Risa is saying, which I love, ignite your spark, is because unless you have that larger reason to do something, Risa, I don't think you'll go on that journey, because that journey is really hard and uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. We then move to step 2, which is able. What does that mean?
Yes. So, what are you able to do? And there's a difference between capable and able. Able is like your ability. And so, even in hard moments, you're able to do something. Even if you're like I had moments where I'm like, I just want to cry. So I'd let myself cry. It was just like, what am I able to do? So, what is realistic? So if we're talking about, say, going back to the example of the job and the career change, okay, well, like, what are my finances like? Like, what's possible? Like, can I just quit my job and start a new career? It's almost like what's realistic, right? And so that's where the able comes in. It's like, okay, what's the reality here?
Yeah. And I think I want to also call out, like, and we've done 40 episodes, and as soon as you said that some days you want to cry and just cry, I was taken back to my first guest. And she said that she was trying to become a coach, and she's a world famous coach now. Um, there were days when she would just go to the gym and cry because it felt really hard to go on that journey. And so, what I want us to really feel, to all our listeners and to ourselves, the journey is really messy. And the pressure that we feel when we look at LinkedIn, when you look at Instagram, when you look at TikToks, and when you look at YouTubes of the world, is that, oh, this person figured it out. But it is still very messy for them. If you feel that, oh, Utkarsh has an amazing podcast, he's so lucky, there is a lot of messy background that you don't know of. A few weeks ago, we did not have a guest that week, and we did not have an episode that week. And then out of the blue, someone reached out saying, Utkarsh, can we have this conversation? And that ended up being the episode that week. So I think in the background, we all have messy lives. No one speaks openly about them on social media. That's what feels like everyone's perfect. We're not. We're not.
Agreed. I can attest to that.
Yeah, love it. So what you're capable of, and there's a difference between what you're capable and what you're able to do. And then we move to this final word, which is now. What does that stand for?
Oh, all we have is now. What are you waiting for? Take that first step, right? We talk about someday, but that never arrives. Never comes. Someday never comes, never shows up. So what can you do right now in the moment?
Write that email, call that friend, send that cold link message, reach out to whoever you want to reach out to. And still, I think there'll always be a right time, Risa, for everything. And then going back to an example so I started Ignite Neurons, Risa, just for context, about 5 years ago. And I always wanted, like, I want to give a TEDx talk because I have a story to share, and I want to be on that TEDx stage and share that story. And so I did not wait for the someday syndrome. I started to send emails to people. I started to reach out to TEDx. For 3 years, nothing happened, Risa. No one responded, or they said, Utkarsh, no, not right now, or the competition is too much, or this is not the process, or this is not the subject, and this and that. And then I said, okay, it'll happen at the right time, but I'll continue to do what I can. And then I saw someone's post on LinkedIn saying that they had applied for TEDx. I said, okay, let me try. Let me apply for it as well. And with non-attachment to the outcome, but did my best to apply and ended up delivering the TEDx for that. So I think that someday syndrome is a very intricate balance. How did you manage it through your journey, Risa?
Gosh, well, I'm still managing it.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm not the perfect, like, I don't perfectly live by the seat of my pants, or as dreamy as it may sound. I still like to plan and have my ducks in a row, but I live more fully and spontaneously than I used to, and I still challenge myself on things. I feel like we grow so much from challenging ourselves. So I do, like, I don't wait for someone to give me permission, or for someone to go with or do something with, or, like, I make the decision, and even if it feels like it might be hard, I just go for it. To me, experiences are experiences. There's no bad experiences. I have a great story about this, where I rode my bike across northern Spain, and every facet from start to finish, it was a 17-day solo bike journey, and it it felt nearly impossible at times. It challenged me on every level, not just physically, but the food, the language, the logistics of the trip, and a lot of people say, "Oh gosh, are you sorry you went? Are you sorry?" And I'm like, "No way. I would never trade that experience." I learned so much about myself. I mean, an experience is an experience. So I don't let the what ifs hold me back.
So beautiful. It just relieves the pressure, right? That an experience is an experience. You don't have to label it bad or good or great or not so great. It's just an experience.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. So for those who are listening to us, always think of what you can do and not what you can't do. And so what you're capable of, what you're able to do. And now that's all you have, the present moment. As we go through this journey, Risa, a few decades later, there'll be this beautiful 80-year-old Risa. Imagine that Risa comes back to you right now and gives you one piece of advice. What would that be?
If you would say, do it anyways, just do it anyways. I had a mentor who, I'd get all in my head and worried and stressed about things. And she'd say, she's this lovely, lovely older woman, actually, in her 80s. And she would say to me, well, Rissa, you can't get it wrong, so you may as well have a nice day. And I was like, it just gave me such perspective of, like, yeah, whether I decide to do this or that, like, how do we know what's right or wrong, or the best or worst decision, um, as far as we're concerned. And so it just helped me get out of my head and worry less about, um, of the possible what ifs, and focus more on just do it anyways. Just do it.
Love it.
You won't know till you do.
Yeah. Love that mantra. I think, again, to everyone who listened, Risa and I have different journeys. We're still trying to figure them out. We're doing what we can to live more fully. And that live more fully looks very different for both Risa and myself. And it'll look really different for you as well. But what I think you should take away from our conversation today is whatever that one thing is that'll ignite your spark, that'll give you joy, that if in this moment you've accomplished that and then you die, it's going to be a fulfilling life. Write it down, and then put this SCAN framework to practice and go for it.
I love that.
What a beautiful conversation, Risa. To all those who are listening, if you feel there's a friend or a colleague who would enjoy this conversation, share it to them. I think it'll be really beneficial for you, and you can add to our journey. And if you're on YouTube, you've spent about 45 minutes listening to us, so better leave a comment on what stuck for you and what are you going to do. Anyways, this is Utkarsh and Risa signing off.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Ignite Neurons podcast. If you found value in this, here's what I recommend. Take out a paper or a diary and just put down one thing that you can change about your life because you listen to this podcast. I'd really appreciate if you could share that in the comments below, because I'd love to see how it's impacting you or not. If you're on YouTube and watching this, then like, share and subscribe, and please make this wisdom go viral. And if you're someone who loves your podcasts on the go, then Spotify and Apple Podcasts are your go-to places, or wherever you're listening to this, just like, share it with a friend, and leave a comment, because I'd love to engage, love to have a conversation with you. Until next time, till we meet again, keep those neurons ignited, stay curious, keep learning, be someone who embraces a growth mindset, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.